Once upon a time in America, we used to have these things called elections. They came around every few years, and for a few months, maybe even a few weeks, you'd have kind of a flurry of activity, and someone would win, someone would lose, and everybody would go about their business because we always had this view, maybe naive, but we had this view that no matter what, we're all Americans, we all want the same thing. Today, it doesn't seem the same. And in light of some of the news that's come up, I'm going to ask you to view that through a different kind of prism. Welcome to another edition of the Marty Chronicles on the Conservative Take platform. I'm Marty Nalitz. Thanks as always for joining us. You know, you're well aware of this, I'm sure, but in the past week, 10 days, depending on when you see this, there have been 4 big decisions that have come down from SCOTUS, the Supreme Court of the United States. And there's going to be a lot of wailing and gnashing of teeth in one particular area with regards to most of them. When you think about it, it'll make more sense, I think, if you look at it through the way I've learned to look at it. And it is this. As I said a few minutes ago, we didn't used to think there was that big of a difference in politics. I'm old, so I wasn't old enough to vote, but I vaguely remember Hubert Humphrey and Richard Nixon. The first time I voted was Gerald Ford and Jimmy Carter. I didn't like Carter, but when he won, we all had this view of, it's okay, we're all Americans, we all want the same thing, life will go on. And it kind of continued for a while. It's not the same anymore. And unfortunately, as I look back now, you can see it changing over the years. As you consider it, and as you consider these Supreme Court rulings, I would ask you to look at it through this prism. Today, I view what we call liberalism or left-wing ideology, not so much as a political ideology, but a faith-based system, a church, if you will. With that in mind, the case that just broke is really crucial to that understanding. You've probably heard this by now, but SCOTUS has voted to overturn Roe versus Wade. Just in case you weren't familiar with the specifics, a couple of different stories went out, both true. One was that they overturned it by a vote of 6-3. That's not true. The initial vote was on the Dobbs, the Mississippi case. They voted to support the Dobbs case 6-3. To overturn Roe, they voted 5-4. John Roberts, surprisingly, was the one that went the other way. So Roe has been overturned. And if you view it the way I'm asking you to, as this faith-based system, you got to understand something. Abortion is one of the most sacred sacraments in that faith. They will do anything they can to defend it. And just so you're clear, it doesn't criminalize abortion. In my mind, that's what I would like to see happen. That's not what happened. They went differently and they returned it to the states. Now, the Constitution of the United States says anything not specifically granted to the federal government reverts to the states. I understand that reasoning. I would take the approach that one of the few roles of the federal government is to protect the life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness of all citizens, even preborn. Regardless, they returned it to the states. So, you're still going to be able to take your abortion vacation if you want. And we'll get to more on that in a second, but it's kind of predictable and ironic when you look at some of the statements coming out from Nancy Pelosi. She read a poem, which, whatever, she read a poem. Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, he has, of course, said we're viewing every option possible to not comply with this because that's the way to think. It's also ironic. Remember, President Obama had presented Merrick Garland for the Supreme Court when Scalia died. That didn't happen because the Republicans in the Senate were wise enough to hold off. When Donald Trump won, they replaced him with Neil Gorsuch. So that's Garland's take on the whole thing. Whoever is telling Joe Biden what to say, he came out with a really bizarre statement that it's the first time the Supreme Court has ever taken away constitutional rights, which is absolutely insane. First of all, you've got to understand something. The U.S. Constitution doesn't grant you rights. It tells the government where they can't interfere. It's a big difference. In left-wing dogma, you don't want that. You have to have something that tells people what they can do. That's important. And just a little history lesson. If you're not familiar with a case called Dred Scott in 1857, it did exactly what whoever told Joe Biden what to say says. It took away rights. It codified taking away rights from people based on idiocy. So they've done it before. They didn't do it in this case. Like I said, keep in mind, you can still go to different states and have an abortion, but that's not good enough. The left-wing church evangelizes. It's not good enough for you to say you can still go here or there. They want to make sure that you know they can go anywhere. So we have a lot of stuff going on around that. One of the things that's going on, you've probably heard this already, many major companies are coming out saying that they will pay for people to do this. Now, this brings up a couple of issues. If you have someone who's on Medicaid, which is a state program in Texas, and they go to New York to have an abortion, who pays for it? I really don't know that. I'm assuming we'll get some clarification on that and some ideas on that. But you've got a lot of companies already lining up to say, we'll pay for you to do this, we'll pay for you to do that. And it comes back to this left-wing church, because we did a broadcast a few weeks ago about something called ESG, a social credit score that's being applied to corporations. I'm telling you right now, so many of these companies are terrified of ESG. They don't want to get on the bad side of this church when it comes to their score in this area. So this is one of the reasons you see a lot of people kind of already scurrying for cover with this. We'll continue to see how that plays out. One of the other things that came down just yesterday was the Supreme Court ruling on concealed carry. New York had pretty much eliminated it, and the Supreme Court said no, and they overturned that. The left are very mad about that as well. And in case you're not clear on that, there are two different types of concealed carry permits. There is one that the state can use called shall issue, and there's one that the state can use called may issue. Under shall issue, you say, I want a concealed carry permit, here you go, and they give it to you. That's the way it should be. Under may issue, the state can still come back and say, yeah, you got to prove to me that you want to be able to defend yourself. Because one of the commandments in the left-wing church is thou shalt not protect thyself. That's an important one. What the Supreme Court ruling on this did, it literally eliminated the may issue clause. Now it's all shall issue. I still think there's a whole bunch of restrictions that shouldn't be there. You know, the Constitution doesn't grant you the right to bear arms. It tells the government they can't interfere with it. And they've been interfering with it for a long time. Again, I'm old, but when I was a kid, I used to go by a hardware store on my way to school, and I could go in and look at the handguns, look at the rifles, talk to the guys that worked there. That was 2 blocks away from the Catholic grade school that I went to, and 3 blocks away from the public grade school, going the other way. Never had a shooting there. Never had a theft there. Different time, I know that. But again, it comes down to this dogma that says the Constitution or the government is there to grant you rights. That's not the case. We see it also in the school choice ruling that came out just recently. SCOTUS ruled that if you are sending your children to private school, public school, charter school, that your money follows them. You've got to understand something. Public schools are very important for this dogma. That is literally where the evangelizing takes place at a young age. Say what you want. I went to a public school for high school. Wasn't like that then, or I was too dumb to realize it. That's the way it is today. That's why they get furious at parents that want to know what's going on. That's why you have people telling kids, don't tell your parents this. That's why all of those things are going on. Again, this is an important part. Until 1980, that Jimmy Carter, who I thought was kind of harmless, he immediately put in a Department of Education. When the Department of Education, which federalized much of the education system in America, when that came in, America had the #1 high school and grade school system in the world. We were the envy of the world. Here we are today in 3rd grade in China, the kids are learning calculus. In 3rd grade in America, we're teaching kids that they can be a woman or a man, whatever they want. It all depends on what pronouns they want. We've fallen pretty far from there. And there's one more that came out recently. It's kind of flown under the radar. The North Carolina voter ID law. North Carolina had implemented a voter ID law that was immediately attacked, predictably in many circles. SCOTUS ruled by a vote of 8-1. That's not close. I don't know how good you were at math, but that's not close. They voted 8-1. They didn't vote 8-1 to implement it. They simply said, yes, the state legislature in North Carolina can go back to defending it. It's really, based on other Supreme Court rulings, it's kind of a done deal. In, I believe it's Wisconsin, the Supreme Court ruled that a state legislature absolutely has the authority to implement voter ID. Again, the left-wing church doesn't want that. And there are some sinister reasons. There are also some impersonal reasons. And part of that is, whether you like it or not, they don't care about you. I've come to realize they hate me. That's okay. I've gotten used to it. But I'm telling you, the sooner you realize they don't like you either, it's very liberating. Life gets a lot easier. So let me recap this real quick, because I know you're being inundated with a lot of info right now. Going back to the Roe versus Wade, abortion is still legal. It's reverted to the states. I say again, that should please everybody, but it doesn't, because they want to evangelize you. It's not good enough that you can go to New York, California, Illinois, Massachusetts. That's not good enough. So they're going to continue to wail and keen and gnash their teeth over this. There's a lot of ironies going back on this. I always talk about Justice Kavanaugh. If you want to talk about insurrections, which is not what we're talking about right now, but did you watch the proceedings when they were trying to confirm Justice Kavanaugh? That was insane what was going on there. Nobody got arrested. Nothing happened with it. But it's important that that happened. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I and many others criticize Mitch McConnell, Lindsey Graham on a regular basis. That Supreme Court wouldn't look like it does today without the efforts of McConnell and Graham. That's just a fact. And another unsung hero, I'm not sure she wants it brought up, Senator Susan Collins from Maine. During the Kavanaugh hearings, she played a huge role when she stepped in as kind of a calming voice. Not saying she supported Kavanaugh, but the process. And I don't know what would happen. Susan Collins has been consistently pro-abortion through her whole career, and she was running for re-election that year. So make of that what you will. There's another irony. It's fairly well known now that before Barack Obama left office, that before the Republicans took over the Senate, in fact, it's fairly well known today that they literally went to Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who is already pretty old and had serious health issues that she was already dealing with. They supposedly encouraged her to retire. Now that stinks, by the way. I don't care if you're a Democrat or Republican, that stinks. Supreme Court justices are appointed for life. It is up to her or him to step down, but she declined to step down. They wanted to replace her while Barack Obama was president and the Democrats held the Senate. Tactically, I get it. She declined. And of course, Ruth Bader Ginsburg was replaced by Amy Coney Barrett. And when it comes to abortion and a lot of other issues, there couldn't be two more polar opposites than Amy Coney Barrett and Ruth Bader Ginsburg. So this is what we have going on now. We have some crazy times continuing ahead of us. Before I sign off here, I'm going to ask one question that's kind of gotten lost. Now that the abortion ruling has been released, are we now going to find out who it was that leaked that original memo from Justice Alito? We don't hear much about it anymore. Keep it tuned right here to the Conservative Take platform.